when I think back, one thing I tell my friends is that was survivorship at that time. To use my mom's own words, she said, I think we're survivors, son. I'm just tired of having to do it all the time.
From Fiore Communications, it's How I Got Here, a show of inspiring stories from Tallahassee area leaders, business owners, and neighbors, all the challenges, opportunities, inspirations, the twists and turns of life that led them to where they are today. Everyone has a story worth telling, and I am really grateful that we get to bring a few of them to you. I truly have been changed by my conversations with these amazing people, and I'm confident you will be too. I'm Dave Fiore, and in this episode I talk with Mickey Moore, a driven high achiever who has been successful wherever he has been. If I had to guess what Mickey was like as a kid before our talk, I would have gone with Alex P. Keaton from the show Family Ties, a super kid with a briefcase and big dreams. Mickey had a little rougher start to his life, however, that included times of homelessness, premature independence, and an unsure path to stability and happiness. We start by talking about how he sees himself today.
I'm all in. Yeah, I'm all in. That's how I describe myself. Love of family, love of country, love of effort. Risk-reward kind of person. And I do wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I know I can be a little aggressive. I have to watch that, and some people react to it differently. So yeah, I mean, I would be honest, and I think that my age now and the successes and failures I've had, it's being authentic. So maybe that's where I'll end it, is describing myself as an authentic person who can communicate that and not be ashamed or embarrassed about it.
So you grew up in New Smyrna Beach, right? So tell me about your family situation. Want to get a picture of parents, siblings, family life. What did all that look like for you?
Yep. So I was born March 2nd, 1970. And that was the first time I saw my dad, and the last time I saw my dad until 1998. Wow. And then I saw him again in the 2000s, I think it was. And today we talk. But that gives you a picture of where it starts.
Right.
So it was my mom and I. Growing up, my mom was married and divorced a few times. Okay. I think out of necessity, if you were to ask her. Unfortunately, those relationships ended. Domestic violence and drugs, alcohol, different things.
Stuff that you witnessed yourself?
I did. Not just witnessed, but felt. And, so that was through my probably 7 years old. From that point on, it was just her and I. But that was, so no siblings. I'm all just me, only child, fortunately,
Right.
And that is really the beginning place for me. And if people ever take the time, to have these conversations, it's, okay, if you ask, I'll tell you. Right. And so growing up without a real father figure, there were a couple of people that taught me some things. My mom's second husband taught me how to throw a baseball. So that was awesome. Yeah. Now I'm teaching my son how to throw a baseball.
Right.
But he also cheated on my mom and drank a lot and was abusive. So it was her and I early on, and we were homeless for periods of time. I've been in line for bread and cheese. I've food stamps. I mean, that's where we were. Right. Couch surfing, doing whatever we could. And when I think back, one thing I tell my friends is that was survivorship at that time. Right. To use my mom's own words, she said, I think we're survivors, son. I'm just tired of having to do it all the time. Again, it goes back to my aggressiveness, proactiveness. Where does it come from? Because I had to keep moving forward. We had to keep moving,
Right.
Somewhat nomadic.
So did you assume in your own mind that you needed to take some responsibility for the welfare of you and your mom?
Yeah. And, my mom was no angel, and she knows that. She made some poor decisions. My mom drank a lot and she did drugs herself, and I grew up fast. I was left alone in the home, while she would go out and do things. I remember Main Street. You ever been to Main Street in Daytona Beach?
I mainly
rode
just went to the beach.
If you rode a Harley Davidson, you would know Bike Week.
Yeah, I know Bike Week.
Okay, Bike Week, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've played pool in those pool halls on Main Street when I was a kid. It was just, I didn't know any better, right? That was the life, and those were the decisions that you made. Where I give my mother credit is she had to do some things to provide.
Right.
Find shelter, find food, and I'll never forget that. So when people complain today, when I move myself, think about where I am now.
Yeah.
I have no complaints, because I've been in that spot. I've seen it. So,
I can't begin to imagine as a kid how you process that, like the love for your mom, the concern for her, the reality of eating and being safe and all that all at the same time.
It's still not processed 100%. My mother and I still have a very interesting relationship. And I moved away from my mom when I was 16.
Okay.
So
yeah,
there's some things there that are still unresolved, but I love her.
Yeah.
I respect her.
Did she find some stability at some point?
Yes.
Okay.
Not lasting. Back and forth. But to this day, she's a cancer survivor. She has struggled through cancer, through other things, and I'm glad she's alive and she's in my life, and she's a happy grandmother, and I love her. But I also know those things.
Right.
And the question was always, how could you make that decision? And she's had to admit she was selfish in some ways, in the things that she did. But I hang my hat on the fact that she taught me survival, and she didn't give up.
Right.
And she believed in education. That was the other piece. No matter where we were, what we were doing, she was on me. Stay in school, good grades, manners.
Right.
And so there's a lot that we could unwind there.
Yeah.
But I have those experiences, and they're in my mind. I've seen some very ugly things, violent things, hurtful things, hiding, and the fights, and just all of that, and how it impacts me today.
It has to, right?
It does. It does. I have to be very cautious in a lot of things. Yeah.
So I can see where people telling you, I can't do that, I don't have time for that, giving up on things, seeing little obstacles and making big deals out of them, how that might be frustrating for you.
It can be. But I have to remember I can't hold others to the same expectations I hold myself, because we all have different experiences, right? And I don't hold that against anybody. It's one experience that was telling was LT. Remember the privilege walk, right? I was in the back of the room. I was there was one person behind me.
Right.
I think for a majority of the class, they all looked and went,
what are you doing back there?
What are you doing back there, right?
Right.
But again, based on those experiences, that's where I started. And I get that.
Right.
So,
and for those who don't know, the privilege walk sets asks you a series of questions what kind of influences and situations were you in as a young person that might have affected your outcome. It has nothing to do with who you are now or what you've accomplished, but what privileges or obstacles did you face as a young person? Right. Is that a fair?
It's a great assessment.
Yeah.
Yep. Kelly ought to be proud of you.
All right. So, how do you, at 16, what kind of view of the world do you come out with? Are you, I'm sure there's a lot, and, is there optimism? Is there hope? Is there anything good? Or are you just struggling and trying to survive?
So my mom allowed me to play team sports growing up, as long as I had good grades. That was always my outlet. It's where I found friends, and nobody cared how poor I was, what I was wearing, what I thought. And I had some athletic ability, fortunately. So that was my hiding place. And I had a cousin who's a little bit older than me. When I was in ninth grade, he took me on one of his dates to the movies. It was one of those where my grandparents made him do it. And And he said to me, now remember, I'm in ninth grade, and he said, Mickey, I'm sorry, but you have to start taking care of yourself. So there is no one that's going to take care of you. Your mom's great. She loves you. But you got to start looking out for number one. Those were his words, exactly.
And you were 14?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I had worked and stuff, since I was in sixth grade, under the table kind of stuff,
Sure.
washing dishes here and there. But I'll never forget that conversation. I can see it today. So that was one reason I asked my grandparents if I could move in with them. And my mom lived in Century, Florida, over by Pensacola. Okay. So I moved. My grandparents said yes when I was 16. So that was the beginning of hope. Now they charged me rent. I paid them rent. I worked 35 hours a week at Publix and kept my grades up, paid my way, wasn't easy, but that's okay. I'm not complaining about it.
Right.
That was the beginning of hope. So from there is where I got into Daytona Beach Community College on a scholarship because I finished in, top 10% of the class or whatever. And then got to FSU after that. I ran away and joined the Circus. Literally.
You were in the FSU Circus?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That was the decision maker as to where I went.
Yeah, I was going to ask you why you ended up at FSU. Mm-hmm. The Circus would not have been my first guess.
Yeah, it was the brochure in the admissions office or the guidance office, financial aid office at Daytona Beach Community College.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that'd be neat.
So what'd you do?
So that same cousin, his girlfriend, lived at Southern Scholarship Foundation at UF in the mid-'80s.
Right.
And her mother helped me do an application to Southern Scholarship Foundation.
Okay.
And once I got that, then I knew I could get out of town.
Mm.
That was the deciding factor, which alumni of Southern Scholarship, most of them say the same thing.
Right.
If it weren't
so knowing you had a place to live.
That's it. Right. Because I had no money, other than paying my bills, bagging groceries, so I couldn't afford to move. But that housing scholarship, again, and I can go even further back, aunts, uncles, others who helped, right? It wasn't all me. It was timely and people being generous and helping. And Lisa Kennedy's mother, Pat Kennedy, I'll never forget. She was an executive assistant at the mayor's office. She took time because she knew my situation and helped me with that application. And
the mayor of New Smyrna Beach?
Yeah, she worked in his office, or the city in the mayor's office. But it was wonderful that she took time to help me get in. And that changed my life. I mean, that you talk about a trajectory.
Right.
That was it. Getting out of town. Love New Smyrna Beach.
Right.
Go back all the time. My mom still lives there. But I had to get out. Mm-hmm. So that was the most meaningful opportunity right there.
Okay. Wow. So you joined the Flying High Circus, which is, I believe there's another circus now, but for most of time, Florida State had the only collegiate active circus in the country. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to picture now what I see you doing in the circus. So what was your act?
So back then you took the class, 3 credit hours. It's an elective, right? After that, if you're invited, it's all volunteer.
Right.
So to get an A in the class or a pass, the young men had to learn how to juggle, and the young ladies would have to do a rope routine.
Okay.
And if you're good enough, they invite you to join the troupe, I think it's called. Right?
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
So I did it for a year and a half, and the 3 acts I participated in, one was called the hanging perch. So you're on a T-bar hanging by your ankle and doing a partner tricks. Teeter board, where they jump off the platform.
Right, the rolly thing?
No.
Oh,
the platform, the seesaw board kind of thing.
Yeah, okay.
And the girl flips up and you catch them on your shoulders.
And you did that? You caught the girl?
I did.
Most of the time?
Ripped my ear a little bit the first time I did it.
Wow.
But yeah, and then the last one I did was the double trapeze, which was, that was pretty neat.
Did you fly or catch?
Well, the double trapeze is
that not flying?
It's not flying.
Okay.
It's a single bar in the middle.
Okay.
And you and a partner doing different tricks and different things.
Okay.
But you are almost like a catcher where you're always hanging upside down. Mm-hmm. So at the time, I lived at Southern Scholarship Foundation in the stone house with 15 other guys. And, I come home from practice wearing tights and capezios.
It's a good look.
Yeah, and then the back of my legs though were always wrapped because I don't know how often you hang upside down, David, but
not real often.
it took a while for that skin to callus and continuously ripping and callusing and ripping. So it was a challenge, but again, I wanted it. It kept me in the best shape I've ever been in. I could press a handstand and all of that, but yeah. So I joined the circus, but I only did it for a year and a half. It was a lot of work.
Yeah. All right. So after college, I see that you worked. It looked like a place called SOS Industries, but I couldn't find a lot of information about it online.
Fortunately.
Yeah. So what is SOS Industries? What was that?
So, I graduated in August of 92. My grandmother died that week.
Wow.
It was 2 days before my graduation. And my mother and I drove home after graduation. I never got to celebrate. I drove home because her funeral was the next day. Needless to say, my grandmother and I and my grandmother, we were all pretty close. And I placed my tassel in her coffin and buried it with her because I understand if they hadn't let me moved in, I would have never probably gone to college.
Right.
I'd have joined the military. That was my mother's plan for me, was to join the military. I think I'd have done well there, but I'm glad I didn't have to. So I moved in with my grandfather to take care of him. I thought I owed that to him because it was sudden. No one else could. So in New Smyrna Beach, with a political science degree, it derailed my GRE plans, master's plan, potentially law school plan.
Okay.
So what do I do in New Smyrna Beach now? And it took me 6 months. It was a struggle. I didn't want to go back and work at the restaurant I worked at.
Right. You're a college man.
I'm
or
a
college graduate.
Right. What? I'm not going to wait tables anymore. So SOS Industries. Basically, you remember I Fall and Can't Get Up buttons? Yeah. It was a company that provided those around the country.
Okay.
So it was a remote monitoring, health and safety monitoring. Yeah. And they hired me as a case manager. So I managed installers in the Midwest, Ohio, Indiana area to go and put these in people's homes, basically. And then was promoted to their state programs manager, overseeing Medicaid, Medicare programs in certain parts of the country. Reimbursement programs for these monitors. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed. SOS could have been anything, but that's
SOS Industries, man.
It sort of makes sense. I've fallen and I can't get up.
I first job out of the gate, but the lesson there, I was fired from that job because I had advanced up to running an entire program, and I had 2 employees.
Right.
And unfortunately, one of them was telling me the reports were done timely, and they actually weren't. And I failed to. I trusted, but I didn't verify fully. And I was let go for that reason. So as a 23-year-old, I went.
To be fired because somebody else let you down.
And again, how does that play in my background and all the things just to get me to where I was? I was like, how is that? I didn't make the mistake.
Right.
But I get it.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, and that's where I started the journey in finance.
Yeah. I was going to ask, so you entered the financial world, banking. Yeah. So what led to that?
So one of my high school buddies worked at American General Finance, and he went through their management program. So he thought I'd be a good fit. And so that's where it started, American General Finance. And I was in consumer finance all the way till, maybe 2000, I think. Various companies.
Right.
But it was interesting because,
So consumer finance, you're talking car loans?
Yeah, all the above.
Mortgages.
Yep. First Family Financial, American General Financial, the associates, if you remember those, and not always prime rates, those are subprime, typically that you're dealing with. So those present the challenges there, but people have needs, across the board. And what they did, they provided great training, and that's it. Right? I mean, if you could go and work those schedules and do collections, that's the other piece. See, people at the banks locally, they don't have to do their collections, right? We had to. So I cut my teeth on that. When you can go knocking on people's doors.
So it was personal, wasn't just phone calls. You had to go talk to people face to face.
That's right.
And it's interesting because there was probably some empathy on your part, right, for people who, not people who were dodging and trying to get away with something, but people struggling and doing their best, but still couldn't make their payments.
Which even today in the nonprofit world, that's why I enjoyed the nonprofit work, because it brought me back to that time.
Right.
You know, I understand what the refuge house is. My mother suffered through. I wish she would have had that. We would have had that. You know, so that's where my commitment to the nonprofit community comes from.
Right.
I leaned on it. I had to back then. So consumer finance, and that's what brought me to Tallahassee again. It was one of my high school classmates got out of the military and was going to Florida State. Said he was looking for roommates and wanted to know if I'd ever want to go back to Tallahassee. And I said, yes, even though I didn't have a job at the time. I told him, I said, yeah, I'll go. And First Family Financial in Quincy, Florida, hired me. And that was in 1995. And I came back up here. And if you remember the cash cow places they used to call them. So when I moved up here, we lived at Talavilla Apartments here in Tallahassee. We had a 3 or 4 bedroom for $500 a month. And it was still difficult to make those bills.
Right.
Because I drove to Quincy every day for work. So 2 weeks out of the 4 weeks every month, I took a check to Cash Cow. They held it and gave me money until I could pay it off. And there were months where I'd have to keep paying that compound 30%. So
that wasn't a one-time thing. That was a regular part of your process.
Yeah, that was my monthly way to pay my bills. So again, I can relate.
Yeah.
But in today's world, people assume I couldn't. Looks are one thing.
Right.
Perception's another and all of that. And no, I've been there. I know what it's like walking in and out of a Cash Cow in Quincy and the one here in Tallahassee on Bruno, the one on the corner there.
Yeah.
Worrying about who's going to see me.
It's still something like that.
It's a title place now, I think.
It is, yeah.
That's how I made ends meet. And I carried that weight. Mother and I didn't really have that relationship at the time. There's no safety net.
Right.
You do what you have to do. I've pawned things. I've done all that. But you do what you have to survive. There's that word again, right? So eventually I was offered a job in Tallahassee, a little more money, less travel, started to get out from underneath that.
Right.
Yeah.
So you moved from personal finance stuff to actual banking and lending, right?
Yeah.
So
I moved to United States Medical Finance. So they collected on unpaid hospital bills. And then I helped them create a elective surgery finance program. And it's still in business. They became Unicorn Financial. And from there, I went to the credit union world, Sunshine State Credit Union, and then AmSouth Bank, Regions Bank. Yeah.
So what was that transition like? Did you feel at home in the banking world?
I did. You know, most of them had transition opportunities, like with team, right? Transition of team, transition of performance. So I like that. And being in team sports, I look at myself as a player's coach. I've always tried to model myself as a player's coach. You know, get in there, have fun, let's do this, rah-rah, cheerlead. I'll do it with you, rah-rah. And then there's a line, obviously, that you can't cross, right? But the credit union was wonderful. It was a nonprofit, of course. The difference there going to the bank, obviously, the expectations of performance,
shareholders and
all of that. You know, scorecards every month, how many checking accounts, how many this, how many this. We're the relationship bank. How many accounts did you open? How many? Okay.
As long as you have a lot of relationships, it's okay, right?
But again, the training, and that's where I'll say again, AmSouth, Regions, they invested a lot in their people at the time. How to build relationships, how to be aggressive, how to be proactive, structure process. Yeah.
You mentioned Southern Scholarship Foundation before. What it basically was your ticket to Florida State and leaving your hometown, and now you have an opportunity to lead that organization. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, pinch me. It was a dream come true to follow Mary Lois Mayfield, the founder's daughter. You know, she was my predecessor.
Those are pretty big shoes.
Yeah. but it was like I was at home again, and I was. I didn't have to learn anything about the program. I lived it, and I think that was the thing that helped us the most in growing our alumni relationships, participation, was that credibility. It didn't take long for them to understand I was with them. I wasn't just calling them to ask them for money. It was definitely about an investment in a program that I was familiar with, and so were they. But yeah, I regret leaving. I can say that just because I love the program, But man, we did wondrous things together. The team, that I had there, and the board, and the students, the volunteers, everybody. But it was hard the first year and a half, because they were in difficult financial situation, as most nonprofits were at 2008 and 2009 for obvious reasons. But once we got things moving, it was wonderful.
So you hadn't done fundraising before that, right?
Not officially, no, not in a paid capacity.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that was new. And that was the question of the board when they hired me.
Right.
Can you transition your skill set? And, again, me being a little confident sometimes, I said, it's nomenclature, honestly. Mm-hmm. It's still the same process, whether it be bank sales or fundraising, you just call it something different. It's still development, right? It's still relationship building. Mm-hmm. And I was able to transition the skill sets consistently and proactively to where we grew our budget.
Okay. Well, and tell me about, because I know you obviously would have to wear a lot of hats to run an organization like that, but there's the two main ones I would think would be, one is running an organization, a foundation, being the CEO of a big budgeted organization like that. And then also the fundraising piece, when you're the main person going out talking to people about the value and why investing in it is good. So there are those two pieces. But I want to hear what you have to say about that, but I'm more interested in your relationship with the students, being there and seeing the kids who, some of them may have been like you, living in those homes, in learning life together, learning the life skills they learn in the house. I mean, that must have been very rewarding for you.
Yeah, I cried a lot. I did. Thinking back now, the students come to my office and having those one-to-ones, going in the house, talking to the house managers, telling my story. I can see it today. When my first son was born, I shared with them my journal entry when I went and spoke to the house managers during their training. Just so they kind of understand a little more about who I was, I read to them my journal entry about being a father one day and dream coming true and, all of that because of where I come from and everything else. Yeah. So, I had a lot of emotional times with those students, which I never questioned the effort that I needed to give because of that. I've been in their shoes, and that helps those students. And right now, a lot of those students I was around, they're already giving back to Southern Scholarship Foundation. We started the Young Philanthropist Society while I was there. Right. And, during that 7 years, some of those students are already giving, whether it's $5 a month or $20 a month, they're already doing it. Mm-hmm. And that speaks to the connection. And that is what it's about. Right. Connecting to the students while I was there was very important to me. Doing dunk booths, we did the race. That's why we created the race, because I wanted them to be in it with me, And, those are some strong ties. And I miss that. Yeah. I love you spend time around students, and mentoring is so important. And those students in particular, they're hungry for somebody like them. They're smart kids, but some of them have been homeless. Some of them have been hungry. And to be able to relate to that and give them an example of you can get somewhere, but it takes effort. Right. Attitude, gratitude, takes all of those things. You can do it. So.
And I imagine that's an interesting dynamic when it'd be easy for them to compare themselves, at least their situation, to the majority of the students who never had to think about anything as far as food or safety or well-being or financing. A lot of students work hard, put themselves through college, but it's different, right? Some of these kids face things that the majority of students at a major university have never encountered.
Yeah. When I lived there, right, 15 guys, super smart, trying hard, but most of us brought some kind of luggage, right? I had a chip on my shoulder. You could see it a mile away, for a lot of reasons, right? And living with 15 guys helped me deal with my chip because I realized there's 15 others that have chips too. So you're not that special.
And for people who don't know what the Southern Scholarship Foundation is and what the communal living and the houses, how it's all set up, in just a couple sentences, explain to us what that's all about.
Sure. So 26 rent-free houses, scholarship houses around the state, in different schools, girls' houses, guys' houses. They live rent-free, but they all pool their resources together to buy food, pay your utilities, run the house. So really they're like autonomous little businesses because they have officers and they have constitutions and all of that. They cook together, clean together, everything. But it's based on financial need, academic merit, and good character. It's a very selective process in that regard. Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Just a quick reminder that this episode is brought to you by Fiore Communications. Just like people, every business has a story to tell, and we've been helping our clients tell their story since 2001, because who you are as a company is just as important as what you do. To learn more about how telling your story can make a difference in your business, visit FioreCommunications.com. Thanks again for listening. Now back to the show. In 2016, you make a career decision, make a huge jump, at least in terms of budget and profile and all that, to be the president and chief advancement officer of the Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare Foundation.
Yeah. Exciting.
Yeah.
Huge. Again, pinch me, having those conversations with my wife.
In the foundation world, that's as big as it gets in Tallahassee.
You can't get, right. You really can't get any bigger. And I'll never forget the lunch with Mark O'Brien, the CEO, and at Cool Beans when we first talked about it unofficially. And, the interest of maybe transitioning the foundation to different kind of fundraising or whatever things, but just to be in that seat and be able to go home and tell my wife, and I'll never forget the phone call when the job offer was made. Very grateful for that opportunity because the amount of change and the impact you can make in an organization that large. Yeah. I mean, healthcare, how important is that? Southern Scholarship, I got to impact education, pretty important, right? So now healthcare. So I couldn't look away from that opportunity. It was heartbreaking, again, to leave Southern Scholarship Foundation. Had a wonderful celebration, but how grateful I am for the experience at TMH Foundation to learn so much about that $1 billion company. Now, when I say $1 billion, that includes the hospital, of course, our parent company. Although they're separate entities officially, it's part of the family. Right. Yeah. Big deal.
So tell me about those. Lasted about 2 years, right? Yep. So tell me about that time. What do you take from your time at the TMH Foundation?
Well, again, technology and healthcare is one thing I take away. The education I received, I didn't have a healthcare background. So part of the job at the foundation, we fundraise to support the hospital. Well, that means you got to understand more about the hospital and all the departments, the 4,500 employees approximately, right? So from neuroscience to women and children, really immersing myself into understanding who they are and what they do and where their needs are. So one takeaway is I'm more educated now on healthcare than I've ever been in my life. I am by no means a doctor. And I don't stay at Holiday Inn Express. Sorry, had to do that. You were going there. I saw it.
It was going through my head.
But so that's one thing. The other was, again, teamwork, working with a team of folks. And I don't know if you had known this, but at that time, the responsibilities also included volunteers and volunteer services, which included the gift stores. Okay. And then the Lifeline program as well, which is the I've fallen, can't get up buttons.
Yeah, there you go.
See how life
Full
comes
circle.
Back around. So my first job out of college, SOS Industries, I've fallen, can't get up button. I ended up at TMH Foundation, and I was also responsible for that relationship. So that was, wow, that's pretty interesting.
You truly were uniquely qualified for
I
that
was
position.
uniquely qualified. I know what the button is.
That's right.
But, my takeaway is, one is the Golden Gala. For the first time in its history, we actually reached over $1 million in gross revenue for the Golden Gala the 2 years I was there.
Wow.
Great work by the team on that. again, to support our community. The others are the structural changes that we made. We created a pledge society, a planned giving society, and did some other things that I'm super proud of. But it was a big place, very big place.
Yeah. All right. And from there, when you left TMH, you focused on more business strategies, which LinkedIn says you've had for over 10 years.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if it was always kind of a little thing on the side and you did some consulting, and then now what is it like to focus on that 100%?
Attention to detail, David. Very good.
Yes.
In doing your research. So in 2009, for 3 years, 2007, 8, 9, I traveled the country as a consultant for MZ Beerley out of Pennsylvania and taught bankers outside sales. Okay. And April of 9, I was laid off there because, again, banking by that time, they were shrinking.
That was a tough time.
So training was not on their budget at the time.
Right.
So last one in, first one out. So in April, I hung my own shingle for the first time.
Okay.
With more business strategies. And I had, I think, 4 clients by September, which is when the Southern Scholarship opportunity came up.
Right.
4 months into the new business, I went, Southern Scholarship, let me go that way.
Right.
But I held on to it, because I thought maybe one day I'll return to it. And Southern Scholarship would have been okay, me doing a little bit of part-time work. But coming in as an ED and transitioning organization, I had no time for it. But I always said, maybe I'll go back to it. So that's why it says 10 years.
Right.
It was too hard on LinkedIn to separate it.
Right. Not worth
4
the effort.
months and then another one.
Right.
Just leave it out there.
So tell me what More Business Strategies is all about now and what it's like to kind of, be the captain of your own ship, run your own business. And
frightening, David.
It is. I can tell you. It is.
Yeah. So really helping, teams, missions, organization, businesses transition from where they are today, wherever they want to be tomorrow. Now, how do I find that out? Well, that's engagement and conversation and assessment, whatever you want to call it. But really it is helping through a transition to bigger and better, utilizing my failures and successes over the last 30 years to help somebody else. And I mean, that is the why. It isn't to get rich. Fortunately, I married up. My wife does well. Not saying we're rich. Point is, it's not all about the money. And I'm okay with that here and where I am in my life and, again, where I come from.
Right.
It's never been about having a lot of money. I've never had a lot of money. I tell my wife every now and then, I said, I remember when we couldn't go to Wendy's to buy a $1 meal, a $1 burger or whatever the value meal.
Right.
I said, now I can go if I want to, but I'll never take that for granted. And so in my own business, I do it that way. I'll restructure a contract and make it amenable to where I think I'm paid a fair wage, Yeah. But that light bulb when it goes off, or when you see the end game and the transition, you're like, yes.
Yeah.
That's the intangible. That's the priceless thing. But that's what we're doing now, for-profits and nonprofits. And the meat and potatoes, once you get in, it's HR work. It could be development plans. It could be board governance. It could be executive coaching. Various things. Just depends on where the pain point is in the business.
Right. So how's that going so far? Are people receptive to what you're offering to be as a resource for them?
Yeah, you've seen it. You got to be out there, first of all. Right. And in my lifetime of banking work, traveling the country, fundraising, I have had thousands and thousands and thousands of face-to-face meetings with people. I'm probably a pretty good investigative journalist, if I wanted to call it that way. And I have the journals to show it, because I've learned a lot about people by asking good questions. And so it's well received when I call and I get in and I meet with folks. And every business has a need, David. Everyone does. Yours does. Mine does. Just a matter on where we are and our budget and time, to do something about that need.
Right.
And I'm happy reaching the 1-year mark, or 11-year mark, depending on how you want to count it, David. But I want to keep a boutique consultancy, if you will.
Right.
A certain number of clients to where I think quality, both quality of life and quality of performance, can be maintained. I think there are there could be a way for a consultant to say, yeah, I want all the clients in the world, but then never really service them, over promise, under deliver versus the other way around. So,
and at some point you'd reach a level, you'd max out your capacity,
correct,
and then have to decide where you're going to go from there.
Right. So I'm trying to be very cautious there. Right now I've got an even split of for-profits and nonprofits. Very happy I'm past my goal that I wanted for the first year.
Oh, great.
But as you know, that could change in 30 days. Mm-hmm. And so you got to keep hustling, right? I got to keep feeding the funnel and meeting with people and identifying opportunities. And it's also, in my age, allowed me to spend time with Shane and Rocco, and that's hard to put on a balance sheet as an asset, if that makes sense. Being your own business owner, I do have that flexibility to spend the time where I want to. Mm-hmm. Last night I was up till 11 p.m. doing some stuff for work.
Right.
Well, it's because Shane had a baseball game, and that's where I needed to be.
Right.
Got his first hit last night, so.
Oh, first of many, I'm sure.
I hope so.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, and when I talk to people about owning a business, it's never about the money, because you can get a job, but the flexibility it affords is, to me, a huge benefit.
Yeah.
So.
Agreed.
Glad you're able to do that, and I'm glad Shane got a hit. That's a good start. Well, you've kind of segued for me. We've talked about a lot of this stuff, but I want to get to the most important part of your story, at least in this part of your life, and that's Audrey and your boys. Yeah. So tell me about how you met Audrey and just kind of your story as a couple.
Yeah. Hearing you asking about my boys, you can see how that's...
Yeah.
My father and I have a relationship. We've never crossed over to a conversation of why this or what happened or,
So how? Let me stop you there. So how did he initiate coming back into your life?
No. So 2011, my wife helped me find a phone number for. Apparently, I had a little brother. So I found a phone number for my dad while I was in college.
Okay.
I'm standing in the kitchen at Stonehouse. I call this guy in Marietta, Georgia, and somebody answers, and I said, "Hello, is so-and-so there?" And he said, "Well, this is him." I was like, "How old are you?" 17. I was like, "Oh, senior then, please."
Right.
And he got on the phone and he expressed to me, that was a long time ago, and he just had no interest. And I was like,
Wow.
Okay. So I knew I had a little brother. So in 2011, my wife found a phone number, and I called it, and it was my little brother. He's 10 years younger than me. And he was like, wow, okay. He said, well, here's my email address. Can you send me a picture of you? And he said, well, you should know you have a little sister. I was like, really? I was like, yeah. Dad married and had 2 kids, and now he's remarried again, and explained the whole story. So in 2011, I found my brother, found a sister, and within 90 days, I met him in Atlanta for the first time ever.
Wow. What was that like?
Well, the next night they went, after that phone call, they took Dad to dinner and confronted, hey, somebody called us named Mickey. Do you know who this is? I can't imagine what that conversation was.
Yeah.
But that's what started it.
Okay.
And I went into it wanting a relationship with my siblings. That's all I cared about.
Right.
And if Dad came around, great. And he's met his grandkids, and we've seen each other here and there, but not much substance there. It's He knows his place. This is my place. We're not going to get into it. Let's move along. And I'm okay with that, honestly. Right. He's alive. My kids have met their grandfather. We're good to go.
Right.
And then I found my grandfather because of that in New York, Dominic Finelli. I had no idea who my real grandfather was until I found my brother and my sister, and then they introduced me to him. Dominic
Finelli is an awesome name, by the way.
I could have been Mickey Finelli.
That would be cool. Moore's fine, but
Moore's
Finelli,
okay.
Yeah.
But see, awesome. So David, if I can expand upon that, right?
Absolutely.
Because I do think about this. So my last name is Moore. My mother's maiden name is Nichols. My dad's real name, last name would have been John. And the reason I bring that up is it's somewhat of a hollow name. I have no connection to family, right? Because my mom was married and divorced a couple times. My dad, his last name now is not his. He was adopted eventually by his mother's second husband, right? So all of it's somewhat empty, and I wish I had that connection. So that bothered me for a long time growing up, never knowing who I was, where I was from, why do I look the way I look, all of those things. And to know it took me into my 40s to finally understand that and learn it, so impactful.
Yeah.
You know, life happens, right? There have been some failures and some ugly times and some difficult moments. Don't care. Because now I can tell my 5-year-old and my 2.5-year-old where they came from.
Right.
And how it started with Dominic Finelli, Sylvia John, you know, so German Italians, all that story.
Yeah.
It's just nice to finally know it. And I know there's other people out there who feel the same way. They wish they knew where they came from, who they came from.
Right. Well, that's awesome that even if, you haven't become best friends with your dad, that it led to relationships and knowledge and bring some closure to some of that stuff.
Yeah. So back to most important, Audrey. You know, you have pivotal moments in your life, where things change. And that was one. I was divorced previously. I was married for a short period, late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
And no children or anything, very amenable separation. But meeting Audrey, where would I be today? We're fortunate that we find partners that can help us get to where we hope to be in life, which is to have a family. And last night when we left the ballpark, I said, baby, my dreams are coming true. Thank you. Serious. Sunset going down, kid just got a hit. I looked over to her and I got all teary-eyed. And those are the things that matter now. But she's smarter than I am. She's less patient than I am, which is hard to believe. No, she's super, though. I got lucky. I really did. She tolerates a lot with me. There's a lot that's in here. I could probably use some time to let more of that out. But I choose to put the energy somewhere else. Like Rudy said, all of his failures, he used that instead of negative energy. He used it for positive energy to keep going, to keep pitching his movie, And that's what I do with it. Turn it and put it in my running. But if I didn't have somebody as forgiving and tolerant as her, I don't know where I'd be.
How'd you meet?
Well, she picked me up at a bar. No, I'm kidding. No, I
That'd be an awesome story.
If she was here, she would roll her eyes. It was Silver Slipper, actually.
Okay.
So if you remember that restaurant.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's right around the corner from here.
That's true. My Rotary Club met there. And after our Rotary meeting, we had a goodbye party for one of our members. And she worked with him. So she was invited to that part of the evening. Right. And I saw her across the room. And I caught her looking.
At you or
at
maybe
me,
somebody
course,
next
David.
to you?
No, it was me. Because if you ask her, she'll say the guy in the yellow tie and the blue shirt.
Right.
So as smooth as I am, and you know me to be.
Super smooth.
I walked over, and I said, I'll go and say hi. And when I got closer, they closed the ranks of the group.
They protected her?
Yeah. So I kept walking. Suddenly, I had to go to the restroom.
Detour.
So I walked, and I came back out, and she was gone. And she had left, but we had a mutual friend. So I called my mutual friend and asked about her the next day. And she said, she was asking about you. Somehow I got her phone number. 2 days later, we went on our first date. It was August 3rd, 2006. And here we are. 10 years of marriage later, 13 years together. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
What are you most enjoying about being a dad?
Just being present. To be able to. The things that I've seen, David, I'm telling you, I've had conversations. I'll never own a home. I'll never do this. I'll never have this. I'll never be married. I'll never have food. I'll never.
Is that you telling yourself that?
Yeah. Why is it that I haven't leaned to drugs or alcohol? Why am I doing okay? Questioning that, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I've always been a worrywart in that regard. Always waiting for something bad to happen because it always did when I grew up. It always did. So being present and being able to have this moment with two little ones, there is nothing better. I have to be present. And again, the bad things that have happened for a reason. Here I am. And maybe sharing all that with them in due time, where Daddy came from and what Daddy's seen, hopefully raise a couple good boys that understand. We all come from different paths, but we can all do well for each other and ourselves.
Right.
You know,
It must be pretty cool to feel. I mean, I'm sure you're Superman, to them. You're their hero. And that must be pretty awesome to be looked at that way and loved that way.
Well, David, you're a great father, right? It does feel good. You can't put a price on it. I had somebody tell me 2 days ago, another gentleman in this town's been around a long time. He said, I don't miss any of my grandkids' games. I don't, because you can't do it back. You can't do it over. You get one chance. Do you want regret? You want to be looking back and go, oh, I wish I could have gone to that game. So no, all that has happened from March 2nd to 1970 to now certainly impacts who I am and what I do. I'm okay with that, and I'll share it with anybody. I'll tell anybody, because it is what I am, and it will continue to impact how I behave in the future. I just hope it helps people maybe understand a little more why I behave the way I do, as imperfect as I am,
Right.
And grace comes from God. Grace comes from Audrey in a lot of ways, and I know I'm not perfect, but you go through some things. Being perfect sometimes is just surviving it, I think.
Right. Well, I don't think it would be a complete conversation with Mickey Moore to not talk about running at some point. So
I do that sometimes.
I do want to talk about your passion for running, the competitive running. You've accomplished a lot, running prestigious marathons. I mean, it's a big part of who you are.
Yeah. Shane has run more now than I did at his age, so he's going to be faster. I remember back to ninth grade running with my English teacher, Rick Norman. He had the shortest stride of anybody I've ever seen because he was only like 5'2". Great guy, but he got me into running.
Yeah.
And I won my first race in eighth grade, the I Run Right 2-mile race. You had to write an essay about friendship to get into the race. And
that's an interesting combination of things.
Yeah, tying education and running.
I like it, yeah.
But running does different things for different people, right? Or activities do. I'll say whatever it is, rowing, hiking, biking, walking, whatever it is. I know you walk, right, in the morning, so it's where I create. It's where I find my peace, where I let go of things. I pray. There's a lot of things that I do on my run, but I also compete on my run, and I love that.
Right. And I don't want to give the impression that you're a casual runner here because you're not.
Thank you. No. And I learned that difference finally in late 2000s. I started running again, and this goes to the point. Anybody can do it. If you think you can't, you're right. But I could run a 1 mile in 2007, and then I got to 2 miles, and I got to 3 miles. And by 2009, I ran my first half marathon. Wasn't super fast, but I ran it. And and then within that last 10-year period, I compete nationally in my age group, and
do well.
Broke 3 hours in the marathon a few times, and that's. But it does take work, just like anything else, right? And I am less tolerant of the "I can't" thing. If anything gets me, I don't think I can do that.
What's your favorite race that you've run?
Oh man, so many, David. So
you were in Boston after the bombing.
I did the year after.
Right.
That's right. That was pretty emotional.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a good group of us from Tallahassee. And I love Boston for what it represents. It's the most prestigious marathon. New York City Marathon, by far, is my favorite so far. Now, especially that I know I came from one of the neighborhoods that it goes through in Queens. But to hit all those boroughs, the energy of Central Park when you're coming through there, the Southern Scholarship 5K, the Education for Life 5K.
That's high on your list, right?
It is. I mean, when you create something, right? Yeah. And I see students now, former students, on social media that are running, that are doing things, and I'd like to think it may have started then, because I know they weren't runners then, and some of them are still running today. Because
that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
So those are probably a couple of my favorites. But yeah, running is a huge part of my life. but it requires sacrifice from Audrey and the family. And again, the 3 words you heard me say earlier, effort, attitude, and gratitude, I'm super grateful for that tolerance and that flexibility, because I might be a pretty sad and difficult person to deal with if I didn't have that outlet. That is my outlet. Yeah. I wish I could go to one moment that said, okay, this is what gave me confidence, or this is what allowed me to. Again, there were generous people along the way. I waited tables. There were people I met waiting tables who helped me in college. When I would come home, they'd give me part-time jobs as a welder's helper. I've worked in a gravel pit. I've dug ditches. I've done a lot of things you do to make ends meet, right? And one last story I'll tell you is I was speaking in a Rotary meeting once, and one of my good friends, he asked me in front of everybody, where do you get your drive? What has driven you? What is it? And that was the first time anybody publicly asked me, especially somebody who kind of knew the answer. But so I told him, I said, one, not having a safety net will drive you. Because if you got nowhere to fall, where somebody's going to catch you, you got to avoid falling. You got to keep moving. And then the other one was I wanted to move forward so fast because I wanted to get as far away from what I had experienced in the life I had lived then. I was in a hurry to do it. I just want to get out. I want to get away from that. I want to get it to where if I want a value burger for $1, I can get one. So those things, always moving forward and not having that safety net, is what drove me. Understanding more now probably drove me too hard in some ways, in some relationships, and I regret that. Sometimes I have a difficult time pacing, understanding, picking up those cues. Okay, back it up, back it up, back it up. It's a learned skill, but it's not my fault a lot of times because the things I've seen and done, if I think it can be done, I just want to do it. Let's get it done.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, my last question is, the name of this podcast is How I Got Here. So that's what we've talked about, how you got to this point.
Yeah.
Where do you think here might be for you in 3 to 5 years from now?
Yeah. I want to continue to be a good father, a good husband. I want to be successful, however relative that is. I want to be a success in the community, giving back and helping others. So I'll still be engaged there. I would like more business strategies to make it as long as Fiore has. But I'm open to opportunities, because I would hope that I bring the skill set that other companies may need. So 3 to 5 years, if I'm back in the nonprofit world, that'd be awesome, as an executive director. But I'm very happy doing my own thing because now I get to help multiple nonprofits and multiple for-profits. So 3 to 5 years, it's enjoying life, being a good dad, being a good husband, and helping others as much as I can. Yeah, when I can. Does that sound good enough for 3 to 5 years? I don't know.
That's a good 3 to 5 year plan.
If I get an invitation to be in the movies again or something, maybe I'll do that.
You were invited to be in a movie?
Recount. Yeah, I was in the Recount movie.
Were you
Don't
really?
you remember seeing me with Kevin Spacey? Not that I'm, happy about that.
Not associating yourself
right.
there.
No,
how did we not bring this up? So you were in the movie Recount.
Yeah, I was.
Where you were like walking by or something? Or
Oh, look, I made a lot of money during that movie. $75.
$75.
Yes, I was.
Is that like advanced extra pay? Or
I think so, because I was in the courtroom scene. So you had to be a certain type of extra.
That's right.
And that was my big movie
Nice.
that I was in.
Did you have to react or anything, or did you just sit there?
Yeah, they told me to be still. Yeah. The weird thing about that, we were there for 6 hours, and it was a 2-minute scene.
Right.
And I just remember in between every take, Kevin Spacey would walk in and out all the way to his trailer and back. Every scene.
He wouldn't just hang off it on the side or something.
Right, and it was like a light. They're like, fix this light. Okay, let's run it again. He would walk all the way back out and then walk all the way back in. It's like, man, no wonder they make so much money. They drag this out. 6 hours for 2 minutes of film.
Right.
Anyway, but no, I have no interest in doing all of that.
See, that wasn't on your LinkedIn profile, so that's why I didn't know about it. Or your resume, for that matter.
$75 isn't much to talk about, really isn't. But we'll go from there. Or I'll call Marshall Dahl, see if I can.
Marsha might be interested.
She can start representing me and
maybe
take me to New York.
She's the one if you need help with that. That was Mickey Moore. I find it really interesting to learn the heart behind Mickey's commitment to the local nonprofit community, something we really didn't talk a lot about in our conversation, especially those organizations that provide the kinds of services he and his mom needed at points in his childhood. In addition to his family and business, Mickey will never forget the difference it made for him, and our community is a better place because of it. Thanks for listening to the show. You can subscribe at Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, please leave us a review. It really does make a difference. Thanks to my amazing staff at Fiore Communications, who pick up the slack while I'm working on these podcasts, and to Troy Bloom for composing our theme music. You can hear more of Troy's creations on Facebook and Instagram at Troy Bloom Music. To connect with the podcast or suggest a future guest, follow us on social media or email us at podcast@fiorecommunications.com.